Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Sullivan, in your testimony, you discussed the three-pronged approach you've taken to address drinking water impacted by DOD releases. In my home state of South Dakota, 21 off-base groundwater wells are affected by Ellsworth Air Force Base, have tested above the EPA's lifetime health advisory level. By the way, the Ellsworth Air Force Base was just selected as being the bed-down site for the new B-21 stealth bomber. And we'll have the first training site as well as the first operational squadron there. So we've got a long history ahead of us. But 21 off-base groundwater wells have been affected by the Ellsworth Air Force Base, and these have tested above the EPA's lifetime health advisory level. While we know the DOD is providing bottled water weekly to impacted residents, can you offer your perspective in regards to how DOD can best address these contaminations with respect to the economic hardships caused to private property owners long time?
Sir,
I should say long-term.
Long-term, yes, long-term.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm not familiar with the specifics of Ellsworth, but I'm glad to get the Air Force up here to brief you. I can say that we're working diligently to get people off bottled water.
Yeah, look,
to make sure.
here's the deal. It's not just Ellsworth.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it is. Another site in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, with the 114th Squadron at Joe Foss Field. We're
Correct.
discovering PFAS there as well. Any place basically where we have firefighting requirements, there's a case of where we've got groundwater contamination.
Correct.
So nationwide, but when we come to this, any plans right now on how we want to address the long-term impacts for these private property owners in those areas? Do you know of any plans right now laid out at all?
So we're, at these locations, we're entering into cooperative agreements so we can reimburse the communities for the costs, so that we're paying the costs of the treatment from the Department of Defense Environmental Restoration Program and our operations and maintenance budgets.
So fair to say that you believe that it is the intent of DOD to take responsibility for the cleanup of these sites wherever we find them, where DOD has an obligation?
Where DOD is the known source, it is our responsibility to clean up the water and,
Look,
and provide safe drinking water.
And I agree with you. Secretary Sullivan, last year I joined with my colleague Senator Gillibrand on the Senate Armed Services Committee in introducing an amendment to the fiscal year 2019 National Defense Authorization Act. This amendment would have allowed the National Guard to access environmental restoration financing under the Defense Environmental Restoration Fund. While the rest of the military has access to this fund, the National Guard is required to fund environmental remediation through their operations and maintenance accounts. As you know, diverting resources from O&M jeopardizes the readiness of our National Guard units. Unfortunately, our amendment was not adopted in the 2019 NDAA. Now, as we examine the extent of PFAS contamination nationwide, much of which originated from PFAS-containing firefighting foam mandated by the Department of Defense, do you believe that the National Guard installations should have the same access to these environmental cleanup resources?
Sir, this is a complicated legal question on fiscal law.
No, wait a second.
And I believe...
it's
sir,
not a complicated question. It's real simple. Is DOD responsible for it, and why would we exclude the National Guard bases from having access to it?
Sir, they are under the control of the governor, and therefore it has to come out of the operations and maintenance accounts. Sir, I appreciate your concern. We've ensured that there is money in the operation and maintenance accounts. It's a zero-sum game. We either allocate it to the environmental restoration account or we allocate it to the O&M account.
I would accept
money.
I would accept that the governors will tell you that we have two different titles that we operate the National Guard under, but clearly the guidelines coming from DOD that have laid out what the firefighting equipment is and how it should be handled, including the chemicals being used, is not under the control of a governor and should not be expected to come out of O&M. And all I would ask is this: would you help us in making darn sure that our National Guard bases have the resources and not taken out of their other accounts to fight to get these PFAS issues resolved one way or another and on an expedited basis.
We're fully supportive of putting the appropriate money in the account for the Air National Guard to be able to address this.
I look forward to working with you, and I hope Senator Gillibrand will join me again this year in making certain that we have an account set up so that these National Guard bases have the same protections as any other DOD facility would have. I thank you for your
Look
answer.
forward to working with you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Senator Cardin.